There's no such thing as the perfect tent. Hi folks, it's Switchback. This is the Durston X-Mid 2-person tent. This is the second generation, which just recently came out. It runs $280. It has a smaller footprint than the first generation, but it's still just as large on the inside. Now, to be fair, this is still new to me. I have not even slept in it yet. This is going to be the first time I'm setting this one up, but it sets up the same way as the 1P, which I've spent several nights in, and you can see my review of that one up here. So let's start out with a little bit of the math. The fly footprint is 83 inches by 100 inches, or 210 by 254 centimeters. And if you set up a fly-only pitch with no inner, you could actually set up with 4 people underneath there reasonably comfortably. The inner peak height is 45 inches or 114 centimeters. The mesh inner is 52 inches wide or 132 centimeters, which means you can actually put 2 25-inch wide pads shoulder to shoulder. The floor length is 92 inches or 234 centimeters, but remember that it's kind of a rhombus and not quite a rectangle, so you don't necessarily have exactly that much length, but you have pretty close to it. Each of the vestibules is 11.5 square feet or 1.05 meters. I mean, we're talking like acreage. These things are huge. The weight of the mesh inner, the fly, and the stuff sack is 35.9 ounces or 1,019 grams. And that's not including the stakes. And I'm going to give you a reason that I don't include the stakes here in a minute. This is a double-walled tent with a fly-first pitch, and if you don't know what that means, it basically means instead of setting up the inner part of it, you set up the rain fly first. And that means that you actually keep the mesh inner dry if you're having to set up in wet conditions. It is a trekking pole tent, but you can buy poles that are specifically for this on the Durston website. I would imagine that they probably work for other tents as well. Now, a couple things that make the X-Mid different from other trekking pole tents. One, the poles don't block the doors like they do if you look at my River Country Trekker 2, if you look at something like the Hexamid or the Duplex. The poles go right down the middle of the door. Also, you don't have to guy out the peaks and where the poles go on this versus you do on most other trekking pole tents. This tent just requires a minimum of 4 stakes to guy everything out. And actually that was all that I used other than door stakes for like 40, 50 mile an hour winds. I didn't even have to use the peak guy lines. Now this one is designed for the poles to go tips up, which means handles down. I have set it up the other way because I want to protect the handles of my poles from marmots, but I have not done this yet in high winds. Now they still come with the stakes that quite frankly suck, but I still swap them out for my light outdoors stakes, and I'll go into that in a little bit. Now you can go as few as 4 stakes or as many as 10 stakes for it to be maximally secured down. You can add guy lines to 2 sides of it here to give it a little bit more breathability and a little bit more stormworthiness. I've never used it with more than 6 stakes because I always like to have the doors guide out so that they're easier to open and close with one hand. Most tents are made with nylon, but that means that when they get wet, the material stretches and sags and weakens. And so this is actually made with sil poly, which does not absorb the water, which makes it more waterproof, gives it more durability and strength. It means it doesn't sag also and get you wet on the inside. Sil poly is also more UV resistant. The fly goes almost all the way to the ground, and you can adjust how far up and down it goes, especially if you add longer guy lines to the corners. But because it goes so close to the ground, it reduces splashback in rainy conditions, and it reduces the amount of sand and such that can get blown in. Now there is also a solid inner option, and that will help reduce any splashback, and it's really good for, say, if you're in the desert and there are high winds and there's a lot of sand blowing in. You can tell that there's been a lot of attention to detail to the seams, to the materials. The panel angles are designed to be a good combination of wind resistance and snow resistance. It has large vents. This also has 4 pockets, so you can see one across the way over there. There's one on this side as well. And then there are a couple of them in the peak corners here. So you've got one up there, one on the far corner. The stuff sack is short enough that you can put it horizontally into your backpack. I've even done this into my day pack when I was packing it for this trip. So the first generation had the sage floor and mesh inner, but the second generation of both the 1P and the 2P have the black. And that's basically to make it easier to distinguish which is which. These are the stakes, and the first time I used them with my 1P, they bent. Here are my stakes, all kind of bent. I have beat the crap out of my other ones and never had that problem. So I will not be using these ones. But it comes with 8 stakes, and I would carry at least that anytime I'm taking it backpacking. When you're looking at a campsite, you want to consider the slope. And usually you'll want to square it up so that the head end is on the high end and the feeder end is on the low end. But remember that you're sleeping at an angle on this one. So you have to consider that when you're putting up the shelter. So remember that this is a fly first pitch, so we just need the rain fly right now. So I've got my 4 stakes for the corners here. Ultimately, before I put in the 2 poles, I'm going to want to tighten down the 4 corners. But the first thing you want to do is do the 2 corners of one of the short sides. The long sides have the door. So if there's no door, then you're on a short side. But stake out the 2 corners of that first side. Then you're going to want to do a 90-degree angle on one of the long sides. And this, of course, just takes some eyeballing unless you carry a protractor with you. And you may have to adjust it to get it right once you have all of them in. Here we go with the 4th corner. Looks pretty good. If you want the sides to be higher, you'll want the stakes further out from the fly. If you want the fly closer to the ground, you're going to want them closer to the fly. So now we're going to tighten them down. Just kind of go around and do all of them. And go in the square rather than going opposite and then opposite, because otherwise it's going to pull it tight apart in more of a diamond shape. And then you'll want to step back and look and make sure that it really looks squared up. That and having these corners tight are critical for a good pitch with the X-Mid. Next, you need 2 trekking poles. If you have tips on them, they need to come off. Same with snow baskets. The mud baskets have been fine historically for me, but definitely not snow baskets. Now I've had these, they are supposed to go handle down, but I have done them handle up, just not in high winds before. Because this needs to go into the grommet, and obviously there's not a spot for that on here. Now I hear that there are adapters out there that you can buy. I have not tried these, but it's probably worth a go. One thing with these is that you can go in through the vents, but I found that the second generation has a little thing in the vents that makes it harder to do so. So I'm going to be going in through the door. This also makes it easier for adjusting the pole once it's in there. Never ever pitch your tent, whether it's the X-Mid or otherwise, with the doors open. Always keep them closed while you're doing the corners anyway. Move it straight, and I'm going to close the door here. So I'm going to let you see this now from here. So I'm going to unzip. And there's a grommet here. This is where the tip of the pole needs to go in. So you can insert it at an angle. And you can see it's a little too tall. So I'm going to go ahead and open up one of these, let it get shorter, and then I'll extend until it's taut. And there's our pitch. Pretty happy with that. Now I have the inner. And when you break this down, unless it's pouring down rain or the there's a lot of condensation, you can actually leave this inside. So you just do what I just did and it's actually all set up. But if it's inclement weather, you'll want to separate the two so that the inner stays dry for the next time you pitch it. So here is the new magnet toggle. I'm just going to pop that on there. Digging it so far. I like it. Good stuff. So on the inside here, we have a D-ring, or we have the loop here. You can attach the inner to either one. So I'm going to lay the inside of this in here. And of course the doors are going to be matching up with the doors. So we can lay it out accordingly. It'll go inside the pole here. Oh, nice. I've got it on 2 points now. So on my 1P, this is only on 1 point, but I like that it's on 2 points here. That'll make the bathtub stand out better. So I attach these to the D-rings. And you can see how you could do this from inside if it was pouring down rain. Obviously I would have the door closed for that. So now we've got the floor all laid out, and then it has buckles here. So I would loosen those before attaching. And that is your basic layout. This used to attach on the inside, but I guess not anymore. Then you also have optional little loops for your handles to go into. And that'll kind of expand the floor a little bit more. So there's the door, and the pole is not in the way. And normally I will stake out this side so that when I unzip the other side, it's easier to do with one hand. It all stays in one place. With staking out the door, you'd want to do it with the door closed. Just use the hole on the line there. And as with any stake, you want the top of it angled away from the tent and the middle, or the bottom of it here, aiming toward the middle of the tent. And then I have these little hooks here for the line on the outside, like so. And then makes it easier, not perfect, especially with a waterproof zipper, but easier to open it with one hand, like so. And then I would also open up these vents for some extra airflow, like that. So these are different because they have that string right there. So I get why they have it, but it does make it harder to put the pole in there. Now, if you are going to use these peak guy lines, which again, I have never done on my 1P, even in a high wind storm, but that doesn't mean that there aren't conditions that you might be taking this in that would warrant them. But you can see that there's a line here, and we're gonna keep those in line with that, airing on the side of the door rather than the side here, just to give it that much more stability. So now I've got 2 of my sleeping pads in here. I have mine and Mountain Goat's. The yellow is 20 inches, the black one is 21.5, and you can see that there's plenty of width and there's plenty of length in there. So again, it's 52 inches wide, so you could have 2 25-inch sleeping pads in here and be comfortable. Now, if we were to take this thing down, again, we can leave the inner in, which is what I'm ultimately going to do. Let's say that it was pouring down rain. I would leave this closed. But you can sit inside here and unbuckle everything if you needed to. Basically in reverse of what I did earlier. And then before you take it down, always undo the vents. So I'm going to take the handle out of this just to make it a little easier. And when you get home, always air out your tent before you store it. But you can see this one comes down really easily. Gotta get all that mud out. Always get the mud out of your stakes, or the sand or the dirt or what have you. And then from here, you can decide if you are going to fold it or roll it to put it into the stuff sack. I have historically been a fold it kind of girl. This one I find is a little easier just to roll it, especially if the inner is still attached like it is. But you can still try to make it at least a little bit tidy, and certainly want to make sure you try to keep any mud and whatnot off the bottom. Maybe we'll fold it. Ish. Is that roughly? And of course, because it is so waterproof, it's hard to get the air out when you use this method. So we're going to go with the fold, roll, and stuff method here. On Facebook, there's a group called Durston Gearheads if you like to geek out over the X-Mid, the Kakwa, other Durston gear. Dan Durston and his wife T are both in that group, so there's a little bit of junkying going on in there. If you want to see my video about the one person, I have that here. And if you may have noticed the extra long guy lines I have on the corners of my X-Mid 2P, I have a video about that here too. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. 32, where my one person has the old, not magnet, latch thingy, toggle. Toggles, I think that's what they're called. My best angle. All right.